And you're very welcome to the Racing Room with AK Bets. Apologies for coming slightly late on this Monday evening, but I managed to go on the piss with Stuart Hogg last night. And after many pints, we ended up going around to his ex-wife's house. He asked to borrow my phone, and then a few hours later, the battery died. So apologies about that. We're coming a little bit later than usual. And we're here, as always, in the company of Mr. Tony Calvin, Harry Stuart Moore, and Anthony AK Bets Kaminskis. How are we doing, gentlemen? Did you have an eventful weekend like I did, or was it nice and boring?
It was
Nice and boring.
it was not as interesting as that opener anyway, Hugh.
Trading wise, how did it go for you this weekend, AK? Were you taking lots of money on City of Troy? Were you delighted when he ran like my grandmother chasing a bus in her last year?
Yeah, it was we didn't have much of a sweat there, did we? No, it was
No.
business
It
was
was all
good.
over before it started, baby.
Yeah, exactly. No, business was good and
Yeah.
results were definitely good on the Saturday, but yeah, all good. Can't complain.
Yeah, I think his fold fees just went from about 500,000 to about 250,000. So cool, more are going to lose a fortune. But anyway, look, we'll get into the racing of the weekend in just a second. Alastair down, RIP, Tony. Bit of a somber note to start. But 1 minute you're being honoured for all your life achievements in the press room at Cheltenham and having the press room named after you. And the next, it's all over. Just, I guess it's a bit of a firm reminder of how short life can be sometimes.
Yeah, well, he hasn't been well for a while, but obviously the press room at Cheltenham was renamed in his honour last week, and yeah, I mean, obviously nobody was expecting him to, to fall by the wayside that quickly, but it was good that a lot of his friends and family were there, and a lot of his colleagues. So none of them were expecting, like no, for him to die within a week of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's sad in one way, but it was good in another that everyone he was there to appreciate, everyone's kind of like goodwill towards him and to honour him really because he was the preeminent kind of like racing journalist of my generation. I didn't know him very well, but
Mm.
like I said, he was always kind of like courteous and
Very well regarded. I think it's nice when these things happen. The press room accolade, Harry, when the person is alive to hear the compliments about him, because quite often, it's too late. Maybe posthumously these things are done. So he was a very brilliant journalist, as we said, and your father knew him quite well, I think.
Yeah. No, they crossed paths on a number of occasions. They were both time form rejects. Jim McGrath said no thanks to both of them at various points during their careers, and more sort of directly, the Top Seas litigation. My dad acted for Jack and Linda Ramsden and Kieran Fallon. And Alastair had written the article about Top Seas in the Chester Cup and had suggested that there had been a sort of sordid attempt by Jack and Linda to stop Top Seas in the Swaffham, I think,
Yes.
and only to let the handbrake off, basically. And it was a pretty damning article. And it led to this huge, well, one of the biggest, certainly the biggest libel cases in racing, and involving a central figure. Bizarrely, was Derek Thompson, who didn't cover himself in fantastic glory when the judge told the jury to be very careful about the way they considered his evidence. But I remember a very strange episode. One of the things I had to do, I was about 14, and they wanted to use Derek Thompson's the audio of his tipping line. He did a tip, he advertised in some newspaper, and they were basically saying, we want to use this as evidence, really, that he doesn't really know, frankly, what he's talking about, giving his tipping, and
Almost.
but no, this is what, 95, 96, maybe a little bit later, and no one in those days really knew how to get audio off a tipping line into a high court trial in the Royal Courts of Justice. So I was deputed because I was 14 and had this old compact computer which had an external microphone that my dad had seen. No one at his firm knew how to do this, so it was my job. And I think I remember going to the offices with the bloody great old fashioned PC with massive clip on speakers into Clerkenwell, plugging the whole thing in and dialing Derek Thompson's tipping line at vast expense, and clamping the microphone of this compact computer to the receiver of this old telephone and recording it into it. And then somehow we got that we got that into the High Court, and it was played in front of the judge and jury. But yeah, it was a huge case for my dad, and really sort of helped to establish. He had racing work for the rest of his career after that. But he very much rated Alastair down, and they bore each other no ill will after that. And he'd obviously been a very talented journalist from day one, because again, another story I pilfered off my dad over the weekend was that he wrote to his uncle David Llewellyn, who wrote for Sporting Life, when he'd had enough of being a junior lawyer, and said, "Look, I just want to go and be a racing journalist." Something else he was rejected at in racing, actually, Timeform and the Sporting Life. He's going to enjoy this listen. And anyway, he wrote to him and said that, listen, there's no future in the Sporting Life. This isn't a job, and frankly, it's sort of falling apart. But there's this fantastic guy here. They're the only hope for racing journalism is this young guy, Alastair Down. So even in those days, he was obviously being recognised as a fantastic writer, and so he proved to be a very good egg, and will be sorely missed.
Yeah, you are listening to the tipping service of Derek Thompson. Call 60.99 for the first minute, 4.99 for each additional minute. In the first race, I fancy horse number 7.
Yeah.
Is that the time? Is that the court case where it transpired that Derek Thompson said, "I'm on the Newmarket Gallops here, and I've just seen a horse run, and I've just seen a horse gallop. It's worked brilliantly. It's one to be on next time." And was that the case where it was transpired that he actually did that while he was working out in Dubai? So they actually nailed him for not
it might have been
the total where he was.
It's funny you say that. He was in Dubai when he was subpoenaed by the Racing Post, because what had happened, not to get too boring about this, but what had happened was he had gone to a Channel 4 racing meeting in the morning and said, at which Alastair Down was present, and said, "Oh, you should all be lumping onto top C's in the Chester Cup, because Kieran Fallon told me that Jack Ramsden told me to stop the horse." And so the News of the World found out about this during the litigation and thought, right, it's brilliant. We've got Derek Thompson of Channel 4 Racing. We'll get him in to come and say that. Anyway, he came in and he fell apart, poor chap, really, in the under cross-examination from Patrick Milmo, and ended up making the pretty embarrassing concession that Fallon might have only been joking. So it didn't go well, and as I say, the judge directed the jury to be, I think, very careful with his evidence or something like that. So yeah, it was an extraordinary time.
In race number 3, word from the sheep, word from the desert is for horse number 7.
It was much long. I remember it being much more drawn out than that, Hugh.
Oh, Tomo, brilliant. I love that guy. Every story just gets better and better. Alastair Down, AK, quickly before we wrap this up. Your thoughts of him? You actually him a few times.
Yeah, it's just, for me, Alastair Down is just kind of like, for me, it was just kind of like getting into horse racing around like the peak, what I consider the peak horse racing time of my following was like essentially right at the start, and used to read the articles in the Racing Post, like the quote that I'd like to read out, if you don't mind. Someone put it on Twitter in the week, and I think it's been quoted in the Racing Post. And it's the one where he says, "I've always felt that the flat was for the head and jumping for the heart. One is intellectual and the other visceral. And as someone perhaps more easily connected to emotion than is entirely comfortable or advisable, it is the code of winter that has me in its thrall." I just thought that genuinely think that's just absolutely masterful. Could read it back to front over and over again. Perfect.
You know what? Good journalists like that, it doesn't matter the medium, it doesn't matter the sport. They will just find a way to connect with the words, and you can know nothing about racing and still appreciate that.
The only thing I would say, the only downside is the number of very poor imitators that there have been over the years of that style. But every bloody Cheltenham, the articles are just ridiculous. The first article of Cheltenham every year in the Racing Post. I mean, past the sick bag, frankly.
There's one thing about him as well. Just he probably, as you go through life, you probably, some people you see and some people you don't see for a few years as well. I thought it was brilliant that he was honoured whilst he was still alive, and there probably should be a little bit more of that rather than waiting for somebody to pass before honouring them. But for me, it didn't look didn't look great, did he? When we saw him on, he looked. Now I know that's an age thing. Like, listen, if you saw me 10 years ago, you wouldn't see these big fat chops here and stuff like that. But I think we change over time. But he didn't. He just
looked thin. He looked thin, and he'd never
he
been
did
a
look
thin
thin, didn't he?
Yeah.
And we just hope he was all right and happy in what turned out to be his final few years.
Just finish up. We should. I think it was Joe Rendell of Cheltenham actually organised that to rename the press room. So if that's the case, well done to him. And just the last thing I'd say is, because not only did he have the writing skills, he had the voice as well. Some of those Cheltenham intros and recaps he did for ITV actually in his later years. Well, it's kind of like Hugh McIlvanney. Like, he had the voice to go with the pen. I think he was I don't think he was an underrated broadcaster. I think he was a very good broadcaster.
Yeah, well said. Okay, rest in peace, Alastair Down. Right, okay, let's turn our attention to the weekend. That was racing-wise, please, if you don't mind. And TC, look, we've got to start with City of Troy. It was one of those, will he, won't he? He obviously didn't. He hated every single step of that trip in the dirt. And I don't know how much this will taint his legacy, or if anyone really in the overall scheme of things, kind of considers this to be a bit of a busted flush now. But he just hated every second of it. It was very obvious early on. Yeah,
I didn't watch the racing live, but I imagine he went from 3-1 to 100 to 1 in a heartbeat, didn't he? As soon as he came out of the stalls, and like you said, he just hated every single minute of it. I mean, fair play to him for trying, but in typical Aidan O'Brien fashion, he blamed himself and not the horse for not kind of like training him to get out the gates much quicker on dirt, which had echoes of him blaming himself for City of Troy's Guineas, debacle, because he said he didn't get him fit enough there. So I'd take that with a pinch of salt. But a lot of people were saying, he didn't have the ideal prep. We had that borderline farcical PR trip to Southall, didn't he? And a lot of people were saying, why didn't you take him to America for a prep race? A lot of the American press guys were saying that as well. I mean, like I said, it was a PR exercise to Southall, and it didn't really add anything to his chances. So and there was some kind of like some amusing. Look, I wouldn't.
There was an interesting reaction. Matthew Mantle said on Twitter, top tips: impossibly wealthy Irish racing outfits install a 2-furlong American dirt gallop on your vast estate, enabling you to find out that your star 3-year-old absolutely fucking hates it in high summer, thus saving 3 months of everybody's lives. I thought that was particularly appropriate.
It was hype city, wasn't it? And all the English press went out there, and they just all fell behind it, didn't they? And it was a bit excruciating, wasn't it? So, but no, fair play to him for trying. Didn't work out. Lessons will be learned, etc.
It's probably not far from a fair point from Matthew Mantle there, anyway. But everybody says, and it's undoubtedly true, Aidan O'Brien, master trainer, but I just think he's just the master of PR and staying on script and getting the absolute maximum out of a stud fee. I think he's unbelievable. Like, it's just he's just trained to the minute for that, like, better than any racehorse.
Yeah, but all the press know what he's doing, and they all go along with it because they
literally lap it up.
They have to, but they have to deal with him day in, day out, and they can't call him out for what is complete bollocks on occasion.
So good. It's actually impressive to watch. He's just straight. Your horse gets beat, and he's just straight into it straight away. The whole
if he gives a quote to the Racing Post, and the Racing Post print it verbatim, that's on the back of the sales catalogues. So job done.
We've spoken about this before, Tony. You and I have anyway, about the lack of ability for flat racing fans to develop any kind of a relationship with a horse, unless of course you have a gelding who's running and can't be sent to out to pasture, if you like, but and to breed from. But City of Troy, he's going to go off and retire now. We've seen him for 2 seasons: his juvenile year, his 3-year-old season, and that's it. We'll never see him again. Frankel was a little bit better in that he came back to 40. But the difference between National Hunt, I think, fundamentally in the flat, is that there's no time to develop a fan horse relationship here. You can for a certain season, but that's it, off they go. Do you think that this is I know it's the flat season, and you might say that's the way it is and everybody knows that, so what are you going on about? But I just think it's more.
I think it's a really good point.
I put this as a question on the running order. It's because I think Harry retweeted something a couple of days ago when Blue Stocking got retired. So the reason why I did that is kind of like to to tee it up for Harry, really, because I do agree that is the case. I mean, this morning we've had Henry Longfellow retired. I mean, that's not
Yeah, but he's useless.
that's not big news, but he's still a Grade 1 winner who could have kicked on at 4. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it was in response to Harry's retweet of Blue Stocking.
Yeah.
I think
not much to add to. Sorry, AK.
I was just going to say, I think what you said is just absolutely spot on. Like, I think your old colleagues, guys, Kevin Blake made the point of, and I love reading Kevin's stuff. But he made the point of traveling to America and getting really excited about seeing City of Troy do it. And listen, I know he's linked to the O'Briens and stuff like that, but I don't feel that way. I'd probably go and travel to go and see a national hunt horse because you feel like you've got that connection to them. I wouldn't go and travel to see a flat horse buy something absolutely out of this world, a Frankel or something like that. Like national hunt, you build the relationship with them over years, and you build the relationship in competitive races that you enjoy watching, and you get pure drama out of it. You just doesn't feel like you get that on the flat.
Harry?
No, and the problem is, to fix it, you've got to fix the bloodstock industry first, so that people want to race these horses for a bit longer and not wait until they kind of basically established a stud fee that was being aimed at and then retired. And so, the whole thing really is a bit circular.
I guess if you're a really determined pervert, you could go and watch City of Troy plant his seeds for his future career. Just carry on.
You bloody well couldn't. You couldn't. You wouldn't just have to be. I mean, you'd have to.
But you might get arrested, and you'd want to come up with an excuse when you go back to your family and say, "What were you doing, Daddy?" Just I love City of Troy. Right.
Hogg would be outside the stable, wouldn't he? Texting, let me in.
Overall, the Breeders' Cup TC, other highlights, Lake Victoria was, I mean, Christ almighty. I mean, put aside, and O'Brien has had plenty of good 2-year-old fillies, but she was so impressive. She's going to win the 1,000 guineas next year. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, it was good opening day for the Irish. They had Lake Victoria, like you said, overcome a lot of trouble in running. Henry Matisse won well. Jer Lyons, Magnum Force.
Oh, Jer, second win for him. And I mean, just goes to show you, if he gets the ammo, he can really train a horse.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Like I said, so it was good opening day. Not so good on the second day. Obviously, City of Troy. A lot of hard luck stories because that Del Mar is a bit of a dog track, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh,
and the ground didn't look great either. It looked a bit churned up to me. But obviously, Rebels Romance won for Godolphin. Starloss won for Rafe Beckett in the sprint. But there are a lot of hard luck stories around that tight track. So a 5 is a good haul.
Yeah, you say it's a dog track. I was there was it 2017, maybe 2016, 2017 in Del Mar. It's unbelievable. I don't know if any of you guys have been, but like as a trip,
a racing fan.
I forget racing. It's just class. Like it's the whole thing is class. Like it's one I'd highly recommend.
I was there in 2011 for the TVG Classic because TVG used to be part of Betfair, so I blagged a freebie trip over there. It's a gorgeous place. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, look, the pictures look great, I have to say. Well done to everyone involved because the coverage I thought was really good. I did watch a lot of it on Saturday night. Right, down to Australia, TC. Lake Forest was the big story there. 10 million Australian dollars, which is probably about 500,000 UK pounds. But a big win nonetheless for Lake Forest. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the horse had been a non-runner for various reasons.
Yeah.
His previous 3 attempts to race over here. So he goes over there, wins 10 million Aussie. Well, wins a 10 million Aussie dollars race. And Kieran Fallon wins by half a length, widely recognised as a great ride, but he gets a month ban and $100,000 fine for that. So I think that's about 30 odd grand, isn't it? So
Do you reckon Tony Bloom will be
I was going to say that. I think if Tony's, I think the pot was about 2.9 million sterling. So I imagine Tony might have bailed him out for a bit there, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and
money goes to money, though.
Yeah, no regrets whatsoever. National Hunt then, and we're really getting into the thick of things. Down Royal is the first kind of big meeting in Ireland of the National Hunt season here. And according to everybody, Jerry Colon was an absolute shoo-in to win the 3-mile chase there. N was having absolutely none of it. Cracking finish between himself and Hewick, who was going to run in the Betfair chase at Haydock, by the way, Shark has confirmed. So I think he's getting as much racing into Hewick before he has to serve his little ban. But he's going to run again at Haydock. N was brilliant, TC, and loves that track.
Yeah, he's got a brilliant record there. His only defeat came at the hands of Jerry Colombe in that race last year, only by a head. So, yeah, that was a good performance. Over here, the real whacker had his first
Yeah,
win
did
since
not see that coming. Did not see that coming.
2003 RSA, 2023 RSA. Yeah, it was like I said, it was a good one. There was one other horse I wanted to flag from the jumps, and that was
Romeo Coolio.
oh yeah, that was for you.
Yeah,
Into 2 to 13, you're 13 grand to win two.
yeah, and I took the money and ran. I tell you what, no, I put this up in the group. That horse is going to win the Supreme, and I don't believe really in any anti-post backing for Cheltenham at this time of year. But he's 14 to 1, I think, still for the Supreme Novices Hurdle generally, and that's worth a tenner. If you can find that anywhere or any better than that, do let me know. Romeo Coolio will win the Supreme Novices Hurdle. You heard it here first,
Just
and I was
before
right
we
about
move on
Steve.
from the racing,
Oh,
yeah. Just before we move on from the racing review, sorry there. Should mention that JRB died at the Breeders' Classic, had a heart attack after the winning line.
yeah.
And the only reason why I bring that up is that the ITV took the American NBC coverage, and what they have there is whenever there's a fatality or horse injury, they have the vet on, and he takes them through all the processes that they go through. It works really, really well.
That's a good idea. I
I
didn't see
know.
it, but I think it sounds a good idea.
Yeah, it'd be over here. Obviously they got more resources. They're all geared up for all these situations. I don't think we've got the finances to kind of do that and the ability to to react that quickly. But yeah, like I said, I didn't really
You
watch.
don't have the ability to react to anything quickly. You in 4 days, let alone
Be
on the spot.
be interesting to see who the vet is anyway. Yeah, would you want them in front of the TV? I'd say maybe like one of the Looney Tunes characters with like a shotgun on his back or something like that.
He's the Dr. Nick Riviera of the pet world.
Everyone loves your Simpsons stories. You got a Simpsons
Jesus.
stories about horse
Any
fatality.
chance I get, any chance I get. And speaking of veterinary issues, what's going on in Australia? Where are we? Where do we stand here? Do we think these bloody Australian vets are here to ruin all the Irish fun, taking Jan Broyle out of the Melbourne Cup unnecessarily? Or do you think actually we have our system down here in Australia? We have a scan. We know what we're doing. We have the best interest of the horse here. And if you come to our house, you play by our rules, or you can piss off home. That's the deal. What do you think, Tony?
Like you said, you have to abide by the rules, and this all hangs on. Well, it actually hangs on the US as well. But the main stories with Jan Bugle, the favourite for the Melbourne Cup, was taken out of the race because a CT scan showed a couple of shadows, and they have a kind of like no risk policy out there. It doesn't only apply to European horses. There are some conspiracy theorists saying
There was a couple of local boys pulled out as well, wasn't there?
yeah, a couple of local, and like it's happened down the years. It's just not kind of like fancied European runners. So yeah, that's what they do. But what they do, they have an MRI scan over here before they travel. The Irish horses and the UK horses, presumably, but only I don't think they've got the facility over here to have a CT scan. All the runners in the Melbourne Cup have that CT scan, so it's a level playing field in that respect. And Jan Brugger was taken out. Now, the reason why they've gone to such heights to actually kind of like with all these scans is because a lot of horses from the European horses broke down and some died. And Aidan O'Brien's record in the race in that regard is pretty poor. So they are,
small sample, very small sample.
It was echoes of the Grand National over here in 2011, 2012 for the fatalities. They had to do something, and their reaction was to bring in all these scans and err on the side of caution. Now, that isn't great. Aidan O'Brien's come out and said it's a bit of a joke, but that's...
if it was just European-based trainers that were being singled out here, you could say maybe there's something in it. But like, Ozzy Kerr, who owned Muramasa, was a local horse, trained locally. He was quoted afterwards. His horse was disqualified the day before, and he said, what I can say is we don't have a more sound horse who hasn't ever presented lame or been treated for in his life. So it's very frustrating. I mean, I think this kind of basically dilutes the suggestion here that this is an Irish thing or a European thing.
Yeah, but they took out 200 to 1 shots, didn't they? Like locally, like I think it's just highly unsatisfactory. I'm the first thing I thought as you're telling this story is how much would it cost me to buy a CT scan for horses and get them done over here before they went over? Like, there must be a better way than traveling all the way around the world and being told to pull out a couple of days before.
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
highly unsatisfactory. Whatever you think, I think the Aidan O'Brien record, people talking about the record after they run and stuff, it's such a small sample, and I presume they're 100% geared towards that race, and it's a longer race, and there's different levels of injury. I don't see anything.
It is a small sample, but by all accounts, the stick that they got in Australia a couple of years back was very, very intense and worrying for racing Victoria. I think it seemed to include somehow Taylor Swift seemed to get involved with it. Quite how that happened? Did she pull out of a concert or halftime show? So I think it was panic stations basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, look, it's. I guess look, this argument is going to go back and forth, but they're the rules. I think you just travel there. I accept that there probably is a better solution than waiting like until you get to Australia to find out the horse can't run. But that's
just to clarify, it did happen at the Breeders' Cup as well.
Yeah, for different reasons though. For different reasons.
Yeah, Ramatuelle, I think, was taken out after scans as well, and that would have been pretty much a hot favourite for the Breeders' Cup Mile. And I don't think Christopher Head was particularly happy about that either. But like I said, it's we're going that. I think we'll go that way as well. You just have to minimise the potential bad stories. I think it is overkill, but everyone knows it could well happen.
You had your first Labour budget last week, guys. A lot of doom and gloom around Keir Starmer's plans to tax the hell out of pretty much everything. Does the pheasant farm on the Stuart Moore estate, is that going to be hit hard, do you think, with these latest farm tax cuts and this inheritance tax, Harry, that you're not going to benefit quite as keenly from anymore?
There is no Stuart Moore estate. There's a small house just off the Uxbridge Road, knife capital of Shepherd's Bush.
Pheasants in the back garden.
Knife crime capital of Shepherd's Bush. No, I've just been extraordinary, some of the reactions to it. It's highly entertaining listening to some of these farmers sitting on 3.5 million quid's worth of land complaining that they're not going to be able to leave it to their kids for the fourth generation in a row. And it turns out, if you listen to the ex-head of tax at wherever he was, Clifford Chance, Dan Needle, that the farm has to be worth more than 3.5 million if it's owed by two people, and then only after that would you be taxed at 20% rather than 40%. And you can get all the capital gains tax relief everyone else can not capital gains tax, death duty relief, by handing over parcels of the property for 7 years beforehand. I mean, the farmers aren't the only ones moaning about this, but the moaning has been quite astonishing. There was a clip of James O'Brien talking to one, and he was saying to him, he kept saying, "But your farm's worth 3.5 million quid. Do you not understand quite how ridiculous this sounds?" He's like, "Yeah, but I can't." But he said, "But it's a farm. I can't spend it." And you're like, all right, okay. Well, say the same guy comes up to you, asks you for a tenner, and he gets out of goes off and gets into a Lamborghini, and you just go, "Sorry, you're driving a Lamborghini." He goes, "Yeah, but I can't spend the Lamborghini, can I?" It's like, sell the Lamborghini. I'm sorry. Anyway, listen, of course they have a rough. A lot of farmers have a rough time with it, but we're talking about hugely rich people, and huge number of aristocrats seem to own about 90% of the farmland in the country anyway, including Prince Charles or the Duchy of Cornwall anyway. And but anyway, luckily they now have man of the farming people, Jeremy Clarkson, to look after them. So and he's definitely not got any ulterior motives. And it's a really good idea. Why don't other farmers just do massive multi-million-pound deals with Amazon, and then that would be the end of all their problems? I don't understand why they don't just do that. Yeah.
We should say, we should say that even though they kind of like dodged a howitzer in the budget, I mean, racing was still moaning profusely.
I know.
You've got the Jockey Club race courses, you've got the BHA, you've got the National Trainers Federation, all saying that they're paying the national minimum wage.
Yeah. So is their real beef was national insurance, and this way, as though they were explaining to the world that national insurance was an expense that would go up and meant that they had to pay more tax. But this is for every business in the country. I just didn't understand why racing seemed to think it victimized.
And it's a really bad look for them to say, oh, paying the national minimum wage is gonna, is gonna send some trainers to the wall. If you can't afford to pay the national minimum wage,
Yeah.
what are you
For a
doing?
job that is essentially 7 days a week, 12 hours a day most times. It's just a really bad look. It's a really bad look. And some of these comments, you just wonder who's driving the bus here. Like, it's like reading the Racing Post Twitter comments. Like, what 14-year-old drunk on cider have they put up on Saturday afternoon to tweet for the Racing Post account? Some of the shit is just unbelievable. What about Jeremy Clarkson's latest foray into horse owning, TC? You tugs at her the other night, and the Hawkstonian, which apparently is in reference to his cider and beer brand. How did it finish?
Finished 6th. I only stuck it in there so Harry could have a pop at Farmers and Clark. It had nothing to do with the horse whatsoever.
I think his show is very good. I like it, but I'm highly entertained. He's another, millionaire ex-public schoolboy who is suddenly become a voice of the people. It's extraordinary.
I suppose one of the reasons why the trainers are up in arms about paying the national minimum wage is they're probably massive land farm owners as well, aren't they?
Yeah. I did hear Jeremy Clarkson speak last week. He just had a procedure done in his heart. He's been advised basically to rule out everything: beer, wine, chocolate, meat. He's just on vegetables and water. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know why you just wouldn't throw yourself into the river and be done with life altogether. But if that's what he must do to prolong his life by an extra, year when he's 89, is it really worth it, Jeremy? No. The answer is no.
It's like that old phrase, isn't it? It's kind of like, I might think I'm going to last another 10 years. It's probably only a year, but it feels like 10 years. It's kind of
exactly. At that stage of life, just cut off this oxygen supply.
He's not that old, is he? Jeremy Clarkson.
No, but I'm saying, when's he going to get this year onto his life by cutting out red meat and red wine? I mean, what's the point?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's probably worth touching on the gambling side of things, maybe in the budget as well, that wasn't touched.
Yeah, well, you dodged a bullet there, AK, in terms of they didn't put up the levy on bookmaker profits. Something that you have warned on this show would have a detrimental impact to all bookies and increase the cost hugely. So you must be relieved at that, are you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to revive this subject so me and Harry can get on the undercard for you and Blogger, to be honest with you.
Did you see the article today's Guardian, AK, for complaining about how their lobbying hadn't worked, basically?
Oh, I haven't. Jesus, I wish you'd have sent that on. I haven't seen that, but it's always fun to see what Matt Zarb cousin has failed at lately. So it's all good.
Yeah, he's been very bad tempered over the last week on Twitter. Indeed, and coming up with these polls that say, look,
that was bizarre.
That was a bizarre poll saying that it showed that it would have been really populous. Why didn't you do it? And imagine if you said that to him. I think Josh from SBC made the point on Twitter. Imagine if you said to him that about any other subject. Oh, let's just listen to polls. It's
pronouns in the bio. Anyway, okay. Are you? Yeah, I know it's not. You're not necessarily, but I guess you must be relieved as well that they bypassed, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm genuinely relieved. It's probably it might even be a temporary stay of execution, but I'm genuinely relieved for just the ecosystem and just not exacerbating issues that I think will be exacerbated by be it problem gambling. I genuinely think it, and I'm being genuinely serious about it. I genuinely think it will be exacerbated by more people going offshore. I've said that from the start, and I haven't seen anything that's stopping that too drastically at the moment. And we all have our own stories. I know plenty of people that would be inclined to gravitate towards those markets. And I think as an industry and as a government collecting tax, I think it's best that that's avoided and we keep the good stuff and manage the bad stuff onshore, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. TC, a rake of jockey bans over the last week. We had Shane Foley for Hot as Hell. We mentioned last week he got 12 days for his ride on Hot as Hell. Harry Skelton picked up a couple of days as well. Eddie Graytrick, son of Warren, 28 days as well. His excuse was interesting in that he spent a lot of time out of the saddle during the new whip rules, so he's not as up to speed maybe as others are. Cobden, Twiston Davis, like there's a whole load of them. Yeah,
a claimer got 28 days for easing down at Leicester and losing a race he should have won.
Oh, did you see that? That was. Listen, what's your view on something like that? Because I saw a lot. Oh, nobody will be more upset than the jockey. Just don't do it. Just don't ease down. What's the point?
But it's a byproduct of the handicap system, isn't it? You know, if he can win by
he didn't know what was going.
It's a job done for the trainer. But you know, the handicapper's got his eyes. If he does ease him down and wins by a length instead of winning by 10, the handicapper's going to rate him as a 10-length winner anyway. So
there'd be so many horror stories of that happening, and they just look so stupid.
I have more sympathy than a genuine mistake or cock up than I do. You know, if you watch racing, you'll see horses being stopped. So I would not be.
Yeah, but those aren't the only two options. It's not either stop the horse or.
I think giving him 28 days for a genuine error. I think.
Yeah.
Not in this case, maybe, because it was quite.
No, hang on. Listen, TC, I would have sympathy for mistaking the winning post, or like if you're out in front, like this practice of easing down has to just stop. I don't give a shit about your handicap mark or what you think you might be fooling the handy. Oh look, you didn't win by like just ride the horse to the fucking line, like, and you won't have this stuff. You just won't have it. This. How many times have we seen this? And it's a joke. If you had backed that horse, you'd be pulling your eyes in.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on this one, Hugh. I think and it's also it's a breach of rules in itself.
Yeah,
not to ride to the line. You know,
you're a jockey. Just ride to the line. It's there for a reason. You know, I just don't. I've no sympathy and tough luck. You should get your 28 days, and I hope you don't do it again. It's just anyway. That's my 2 cents.
You seem very passionate.
We're just playing to the crowd, you.
I can definitely. There's definitely a losing bet that sparked that anyway.
Not that one. In the past, Christ. 2 things I learned from the Cage Rabshin article in the Racing Post last week. Number 1, he loves New York City, and number 2, he loves London City. The end.
Yeah,
loves himself. That's it.
Number 3. Well, we already knew that. Christ.
Yeah,
it wasn't very insightful, was it?
He could have done a bit more digging than that. I mean, he's like you said, he's such a character that you could really get dig into and stuff like that. But I imagine there were prerequisites about what he could and couldn't ask in that article.
He could just be massively boring.
Yeah, there is
that is one explanation.
To be fair, like I would have loved even to expand on the stuff about him coming from Tehran. His father lost everything. What happened there? It was just it glossed up. It was just everything we already knew, and it was a mouthpiece publicity for.
You just don't come from Iran and just suddenly set up an investment company, do you? I mean, there's got to be a little.
There's got to be a story there. Like,
not after you lose everything. Like, where's that seed money coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, anyway, massive opportunity missed. I mean, the things we learned there, absolutely nothing.
But
go on.
I thought it was interesting. I thought what you were saying about it, like they seem to be. It's a weird one, right? Because I can't relate to the fella at all, and probably not many people can. He's living in a world that we're probably not living in. But it's probably you probably don't want him to lose the whole 40-odd million. Like you want him to get something back and say, yeah, like. It's kind of that way. Like you don't want. I just think the whole game is just probably that they're up against it. I'd imagine, and they've had a decent level of success from what I can see. It's not gone too bad, and it's not gone too. It could have gone a lot worse. And I'd imagine that when it does go, if it does go bad, it could be fairly dramatic. Like it might actually be something worth writing about. But I wouldn't
like to be writing for him when it does go bad.
Yeah, like people putting that amount of money in, you probably do not that you wish them well and they deserve to well, but you probably want them to not absolutely blow out of the sport as well, which tends to be what happens.
Do we really care? I mean, like wealthy people's money. I mean, I couldn't give a shit, to be honest with you. If you lose everything, that's my own view. But anyway, let's move on. When are Cheltenham figures a positive story? When is it not a positive story? The answer is when they include all the children that came in with tickets last weekend, TC. So our positive news attendance story was a complete wet blanket, as it turns out.
This was, this is a failing of ours. We put a positive story.
We threw it in.
As soon as,
we've learned our lesson. We're never doing it again. Nothing positive is ever going on the running order in this show again.
As soon as I said, look, Cheltenham attendance figures, best October meeting ever. 5,000, students getting in there. Great, great, brilliant. And then as soon as kind of the pod comes out, he said, "I hope you highlighted the fact that I was going in with my push chair and my under 18 kids, and we had to print out a ticket at the gates. There were queues there."
And apparently kids hanging around outside to find adults that would take them in. Extraordinary.
This was absolutely bizarre. I mean, this was not an isolated story that people contacted me about. People were contacting me on direct messages as well. All the kids, and normally rock up there under 18, normally can just get in free. Because he had to be accompanied by the parent and get the tickets printed out, they were just going up to strangers and saying, "Can you pretend to be my dad or my mum and sign me in?" I mean, that's massive problems in itself. But they are doing this legitimately, because it's been a levy board directive since 2022. It's just they haven't really done this before. But someone's obviously come up with a great idea that, in order to boost our figures, let's enforce this and make people print out tickets for all the under 18. So you have to take.
Would you kids like to come with me?
It was the other way around. It was, "Would you adults like to come with me?"
Apparently, Leona Meyer walked through the gates. They counted her as 2 as well. I don't know what's going on. Attendance figures sham. It's a scandal, I tell you.
Cheltenham said, "Can you lie and say it's triplets?" Yeah.
There's nothing quite like fudging attendances than for window dressing to say your sports in rude health, is there? Like it's worrying when you're starting at this stuff. Like,
it's the naivety. People won't kind of like come out.
Oh yeah.
The point. It's turned
social media.
It's turned an initially positive story into a complete negative backlash, and deservedly so. Just you can't pull the wool over people's eyes here,
It's like the kind of like Shane Foley 12-day ban, and there's been no follow up in the Racing Post on that or this Cheltenham attendance story. But like I said, they legitimately are doing it, but they're probably doing it for a reason.
Right, just before we get to our questions, AK, how's the night before the US election, when Kamala Harris defies the odds of the bookmakers, who haven't a clue what they're doing, and romps to victory as US president? What way is the market?
It's been a fascinating market. Absolute heartbreaking stuff that our site was down for a few hours today. It's right in the thick of it, which is our first site outage in as long as I can remember. Essentially, I don't think we've had one. So it's very disappointing from that point of view. But prior to that, just the level of business and the level of interest in this is off the charts. Our biggest event turnover wise was the US Masters Golf. Probably not helped by this genius here sat on this call going 5-1 Scotty Scheffler when he won the Masters this year. So we turned over a decent 6-figure amount on that event, and it was very costly. And then this is gonna dwarf it essentially. This is 2 or 3 times the level of turnover essentially, and we've just bet this really hard. So we've been best price both candidates for a long time. We've done a bit of PR around it this week with sending Dave O'Reilly to Washington, but that was Washington in Sunderland rather than the States. Well, it was technically to Sunderland because we got kicked out of Washington for what we were trying to do there, but it ended up being mainly in Sunderland. But yeah, the level of business is just off the charts. New accounts opening every 5 minutes, and the bet, not just the bet count, but the average stake is just, it's absolutely unprecedented. Really, really interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if what we've laid so far will double in the next 24 hours. It's that level of interest. It's going to be class.
Yeah. Are any of you going to stay up and watch it?
I don't know. No, probably not. I just no. It ruins the next.
Settle the market this time next year, will you?
Yeah,
it's possible. Yeah.
If Trump does as usual, like brace yourself for civil war.
That's the one negative. You get all the nut jobs. Emailing in and I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
One thing that strike me of that David O'Reilly video in Sunderland was how he managed to be the weirdest person on that video. All the people There were some crackers there, wasn't there?
I'm telling you now. You want to see the outtakes that we couldn't put in?
I'm telling you,
They're off the
I'm telling
charts.
you now, that woman he interviewed 3 times. If he didn't take her for a drink afterwards, I'm a Dutchman.
I think she was keen.
Okay, let's go to our listener questions then. And
So before we move on, just very quick one to Anthony. Do you remember a few weeks back, Ladbrokes refused to say how much a bet struck on Constitution Hill in a shop?
Yeah.
How much it was?
Yeah.
Every single bookmaker is coming out and saying we've laid this to five figures, 6 figures, etc. Why are they confident in themselves to do that, but they won't tell you laying a £5 bet on Constitution Hill in a betting shop? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think it's probably just an isolated case. Somebody, I think that I don't think it's might not have been that coordinated a response why they didn't name the figure for Constitution Hill. What would you say about that? Like, I don't know. I don't think there's any. I'd be fairly sure, and I'm not sure, but I'd guess that Ladbrokes, if they're laying bets on the election, they'll name the stakes. I think that's probably just somebody in the department who's just fudged it on that day in particular, and I wouldn't say it's a. I'd be surprised if that's a policy because it's just the wrong way to go. But yeah, we'd happily listen if I could lay a 5-figure bet on Constitution Hill, I would. You're more than welcome to come to me and we can shout about it together if you like. But yeah, it's I'll happily list stakes, and I will do, because you're laying stakes to people who've proved the source of the funds and their affordability and things like that. There's no way you wouldn't. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Say it for publicity. There's nothing to be ashamed of here.
Yeah. It shows you the level of paranoia, though, in some places.
Let's move on to listener questions then, guys. And let's get through as many of these as we can. Guida Racing says, could you pick your ideal anytime broadcasting team for a day at the races? Who would it be? Mine below is presenters Down and Hislop. Pundit McGrath and Ruby Walsh. Betting is Tanya Stevenson, and commentary Richard Hoyles. Your ideal racing team, Tony Calvin.
I'll be very quick on this because I didn't really have a firm view. Anybody who I know is betting their opinion that they're giving me. The likes of Steve Mellish, Eddie Fremantle, 2 people like
AP McCoy, Barry Geraghty. Yeah.
No, dear.
So, anyone else want to take a go at this? Do you have any ideal presenting teams?
Hoyles.
It's you.
Oh yeah, we'd have a few main presenters.
In all roles, like Alec Guinness, just playing all parts.
Yeah, I'm standing right here.
Turning into a dialect, you.
Yeah, your audio's gone.
Yeah, that's better. Back we go.
There we go. We'll keep going. We won't cut that out.
Hearing your opinions on these national hunt horses being pulled out of races due to good to soft ground, i.e. grey dawning twice in 3 days. There's no reason why a trainer shouldn't be running a horse on good to soft ground unless it's an absolute mudlark, overcautious. Yeah, I agree with you. Some of these infuriate fans and punters, particularly if you've backed a horse anti-post and it's withdrawn, the day of because the ground is unsuitable, and you're saying, well, what are you talking about? He's managed to win on this TC. I know it's a bugbear of a lot of people.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, ITV were calling out John Joe Silenson at Wetherby for producing good ground and saying, you should have watered more. I mean, the BHI directive is to produce, good ground, and at Wetherby actually water for that. So yeah, I think it's an absolute nonsense. If you're saying good ground isn't safe, then yeah, I'm not sure that where the direction of travel for national hunt racing is.
Yeah, Chris Kettle says, what's the bloody difference between summer and winter ground? Good ground. Should it not be rebranded, given many trainers don't agree that it's good for their horses? So summer and winter, good ground.
Very quickly, courses provided going stick reading, and they are true in summer as it is in winter. So you hear this a lot from trainers and broadcasters like Mick Fitzgerald, but I don't buy it.
Yeah. Callum Ray, we kind of dealt with this already, but with the unlimited amount of money that Coolmore have, why was City of Troy's prep run at Southall and he'd never seen a dirt track to this week? Surely they're laid their own track at Ballydoyle, or it was flown out to one of its many training facilities in America to try it on proper dirt surface first. Yeah, look, we spoke with this, Callum. It does it does make sense on the face of it to have some sort of a dirt facility if you're going to plan to run at the Breeders' Cup. I know it's only one race a year that they'll get to run on it, but it's a pretty big race. And when you consider, I guess, the big deal that had been made of City of Troy and everything that kind of depended upon his opponent and his performance there, it would make sense to have some sort of a dirt track where they could train the horses. But yeah, it's not happening for whatever reason. Lee Chapman says, is there any reason the Racing Post couldn't publish a 16-page pullout daily midweek or a 13-page pullout on a Saturday? I couldn't justify purchasing it on a Saturday anymore when the tabloid pullouts are pretty good. It needs to be a couple of quid. Yeah, I mean, it's, what is it, 5 something now for the Racing Post? It's absolutely mental. I used, and Tony, I know you guys say we don't subscribe to the website because like I buy it when I need it and I pick it up every so often when I want to read something in specific, but I just can't justify the price. It's mental.
Yeah, like I said, it's when they were going on about affordability checks. You know, someone's worked out how much to the penny, how much the Racing Post cost you if you bought it 364 days a year. It's astronomical, and you have to have an online subscription because you can't. There's no kind of like depth to the coverage actually in the paper itself. And also, I mean, some of their columns, tipping columns, are literally some of the scantest ones out there because there's no room for them in amongst all the advertising. No, I think the main question for the questioner is the tabloid pullouts are very, very good. The likes of the Sun and the Mirror, etc. Especially when David. I think the Mirror is very good.
I like David Jennings columns in the Racing Post, and like there's one or two other bits that I but I think in general, just it's very hard to justify buying it every day. You want AK?
Yeah, no, I think it really is, but I think it's just the way media is in general. To be honest with you, I think the Racing Post online, I think, is very, very good. I think it's absolutely it's superb as a resource. If you're going to put money into it, and they probably want you to go that way anyway. It's probably being driven towards that. Like the newspaper, you wouldn't even nick it from the bench, would you? Like there's nothing in it. You definitely wouldn't pay a $5 for it. But then the flip side of that, and I hope I'm being fair here, is the online is absolutely superb. So I think that's probably the word the resource has gone.
No, it really is. The online is terrific, value.
Yeah. Gary DC, are the Skeltons good or bad for the sport? Ooh, Gary, that's a big question. Happy to be loud and proud when they pull off, in their minds, an amazing training performance, Langer Dan, but moan when the racing public suggests that they might not be trying when a short price favourite gets beaten. This is in relation to Dan Skelton last week. He was giving out then when one of his horses went off short price favourite, was absolutely trounced and he got a bit of stick from the crowd. I'm kind of with you in this, Gary. Like, you either take it or you don't. The Langer Dan, wasn't that a bit of genius training when he absolutely rode the handicapper all season? And then, he has to be able to take it, I think, when it doesn't go his way. Any thoughts?
Dan's quite, it's quite a kind of like combative guy, isn't he? So yeah, fair play to him. But yeah, like I said, it's if you're going down that path with certain and plans and coups, then you got to take the rough with the smooth. But yeah, it's because he's a very young, hungry trainer, and he does attract a lot of criticism and a lot of praise as well. So yeah, I think it's all part.
He's a hungry young trainer. He's training for a sandwich. Stuart Ackister says, after the discussion last week about racing media being connected to stables, family, etc., is that better or worse than outsiders like the racing blagger who deletes losing bets? Does he delete? I mean, I blocked him, so I can't see this. Does he actually delete losing bets? If I couldn't dislike that guy anymore, Jesus. Post lies on here, etc., about being in the will enclosure down Royal and other places. Yeah, I don't know. Outsiders, no issue with outsiders. I don't have no issues with. I'm an outsider. I have no issue with outsiders. I just don't like that. He's an absolute tool. So like, what can you say? I don't know. I mean,
I think it's very harsh. Very harsh.
No, it's not. He's an absolute tool. I can't believe you have any time for it. He's an absolute spanner. Look at the stuff that people quote tweet in the videos. Like I just.
It is what it is, Hugh. Like he's playing to the crowd. Like, and it's
what crowd is he playing to? A bunch of half-wits.
Yeah, his crowd is fairly substantial. That's why he's able to play to it. Like I think he is what he is, but I think you can also produce some very good content, and there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't listen to as well myself. It's a real mixed bag, but I don't think you can't get annoyed at influencers because they're playing to that demographic of person. I think it's not for us essentially. Yeah,
but it's got nothing to do with him being an outsider or an insider. Going back to the question, like, it's a slightly strange question. Again, it's good. It's to do with the content you put out, regardless of whether you're a trainer's son or daughter or a complete
he did
outsider.
He did one thing that I genuinely thought was brilliant. You will hear this now, but he did something in a trotting race where he was in the back of it. Look at his face there. He was in like the back of one of them carts or whatever, the bloody gladiator type carts at some kind of trotting event, and I think it was very good.
Right, I'm making a stand here. We're not.
Have a look at that, you.
We're not mentioning that idiot's name on this thing anymore, right? Like, that's the last time we're going to talk about him. We're not giving any more action. He's like, right, that's it, done.
You could reenact that scene from Gladiator when he's in the back of the.
Unless he wants to fight me, that's the last time we're going to say it, right? Okay.
You could be there with the Russell Crowe with a spear.
I'd sign me up, Doc. Anywhere, right? This is Joe McFadden. Quickly, Tony, as an ex-Betfair contributor, why did Betfair and Paddy Power rush out the Thursday podcast? They record, well, this is talking about the competition really, but they record right after declarations, leading to hasty analysis, waiting until Friday would surely be better insight on ground, non-runners, etc.
Yeah, they used to record at 2:45 on a Thursday, which when you've got 10 or 11 races is a push. And basically what I used to do is I used to do all the races at the anti-post day, so you pretty much know all the horses. It's not enough time to do it adequately, but what I will say is quite a few other podcasts do the same as well. So it's not Betfair, Paddy Power specific. No, Friday, if you're going to do it, Friday, allow your people a good 24 hours to have a look at the races and let the betting bed down.
Yeah. When is the Racing Room Tipster podcast launching, AK? When are the plans to get that going in the new year?
We'll see.
Depends when the blog is free.
Yeah,
Calvin and Derek Thompson speaking at one word. 6 hour podcast.
He's just currently negotiating.
Give me a second here.
He's just currently negotiating with a Stephen Power for that use.
David Robert Beale says, what happened to Kevin Stott, Ross Orion riding on the Crestford Way, both ex-Ama racing jockeys, just shows how things can change. Also, Charlie Hill's only 25 winners so far this season. But Ross Orion is flying, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Charlie Hill's had a shocker. Only 25 winners this season, which is pretty horrendous. Kevin Scott, former beau of Megan Nichols, he has just announced he is starting a new career in New Zealand.
Oh, very good. Okay, good stuff. And 80 says, this is for you, AK. Any thoughts on on-course bookies offering win-only and refusing each-way bets on bad for them each-way races? Today, the 1-1-18 in Carlisle, 8-runner race over half the ring offering only win bets. Why would they not go each way?
That's a real interesting one. So for us, we always offer each-way bets, but it's two different. It's hard for the race score to ascertain this. But if you're on the track, you need to display your each-way terms very clearly. If you want to bet win only, you can, but you should be displaying that very, very clearly as well. I think the people in Ireland, there was a couple that bet it win only, and what all that happens is people go up to them asking for an each way bet and they just say win only. Like they're attracted by the price, they're not really focusing on the terms. So we price up bad each way races with each way terms, and you just factor in that anomaly accordingly. So you can have races where your 4-1 shot is 10 genuine true win price, but his place price might be 5s on. So the 4-1 is factoring that in basically. But then you might have somebody stood next to you going to 7-1, and people are attracted to the board because it says 7-1. I think when you're on course, the ideal situation should be on course. Everyone bets to the same each way terms and just bet standard each way terms. England's a little bit different from Ireland. You bet 5th to 4 in 16-runner handicaps in England, or they're allowed to. Whereas in Ireland, you have to bet standard each way terms. So we bet a quarter to 4. But the vast majority of people don't know the difference between a 5th and a quarter, as is shown frequently by extra place races, dragging people in, but usually an inferior fraction as well. So yeah, I think if the ideal situation would be everyone bets to the same each way terms, but we're not in ideal situations. But yeah, they can bet win only as long as they're displaying it clearly. And if you want a win bet, you can go to them. And if you want an each way bet, go to someone displaying each way terms.
Yeah, okay, great stuff. Best of luck in the Melbourne Cup to all horses running, but in particular to Vauban, who I am still convinced is going to win at around about 5-1. US presidential election, we'll be talking about it next week. Best of luck. Hopefully the site stays live, AK, as we go to the run-in. And Kamala Harris, Vauban double will get you a nice few quid for pints this weekend. We're all off to buy some baby clothes for Leona and Stuart with Daddy and prisoner number 9631028 on the back. Wish us the very best of luck. We'll talk to you next week. Good luck.